Good morning. Welcome.
Good
Morning.
Good to
morning.
see people. We'll just wait for some more folks to join. Thanks for coming. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you for making time to join us this morning. It's feeling a little springy, so I like that. I saw some things growing this morning, so we'll just give it a few more minutes to let a couple people join.
Sophia, are you seeing that I've joined? This is Carol.
Yes, welcome. We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
Okay, we've still got some people joining from the waiting room, so I'll just give it one more minute. Good morning. Okay, well, I know we have busy people with busy schedules, so um, we will get started. Happy to have people come on in as they join. Quick reminder on kind of Zoom things, feel free to add questions as they come up for you in the chat. Um, and we will get started. So, wanted to thank you again all for being here. I'm Sophia Linares-Coy. I'm the executive director of the Food Group. Many of you are familiar with the Food Group's work. We are celebrating our 50th year this year. So, 50 years of being a really kind of community responsive nonprofit. We were founded by 14 food shelves in Hennepin County, of how can we kind of do better together. So collaboration is absolutely at the heart of what we do. We do our work in four main ways across the food system. So doing anti-hunger work, affordable grocery, sustainable farming, and advocacy. Um, to kind of ground our conversation today, we are going to be talking a bit about some of the rapid response planning that the food group has done, but also that the entire sector has been doing this past year. And so, to start with context, wanted to share a little bit about what we've seen and so many of the things that have happened kind of at a federal or state level really have had impacts directly on food access. So that's what we'll really talk about today. But just a reminder that we saw some, federal funding freezes in the spring of 2025. We saw HR 1 in the summer of 25, and that federal legislation included major changes and pretty significant disinvestments to the SNAP program, which so underpins kind of our anti-hunger efforts. Then this past fall, we saw a government shutdown, and for the first time this past fall, that government shutdown directly impacted individual SNAP benefits. Coming on the heels of that, then we saw Operation Metro Surge, which again, we'll talk a little bit more today, really did have very specific food access and food distribution implications. And then looking a bit ahead, what we'll be seeing this spring, summer is some of those new requirements and restrictions that were part of HR 1 will start being implemented and result in some folks likely losing SNAP benefits. And then again, all of those kind of big significant events are on top of an emergency food system in our state that really is at capacity. And so when we look at what we saw statewide in terms of food shelf visits in 2025, it was another year of 9 million visits. So we can see we're still 2.5 times what the volume, right, is for food shelves across the state that they were seeing pre-pandemic. So today I wanted to just talk a little bit with all of you about the really rapid community informed response planning that has been the core of the food group's work for a long time. But also, this is not all about the food group. I know we have amazing representatives of so many different groups on this call who are doing really direct food work, whether it's we have food shelf partners on the call, people who've done volunteering, who have funded efforts, who are doing support for farmers. So this is about all of us, certainly. But today, just wanted to highlight some of the response work that we've done at the food group. So although it feels like a long time ago, just a reminder that when the SNAP benefits were in jeopardy for folks, that was 440,000 SNAP beneficiaries who felt that their benefits were in jeopardy, and about $70 million of SNAP benefits. So again, for those of you who are like, why are we talking about SNAP? We're talking about emergency food distributions and nonprofit food work. For every meal that's provided by food shelves or meal programs or food banks, SNAP provides 9. And so the threat to SNAP in November was incredibly destabilizing. Most importantly, destabilizing to SNAP recipients, but also incredibly destabilizing to food shelves and food banks because the gap was so dramatic. Again, I won't take a ton of time talking about our SNAP response because I don't know about all of you, but for me, November feels about 1,000,000 years ago. But just a reminder that thanks to many of your support, we were able to really get extra free food to food shelves. We also were able to get free food direct to our affordable grocery participants, many of whom are on SNAP, and really focus on ways that we could try to buffer and help fill that gap. Luckily, SNAP benefits did not end up being delayed a long time, but we had to start this mobilization kind of in late October when they were threatened. So I did want to share a really brief video, just so it's not only my voice that you're hearing this morning, but of one of our Twin Cities mobile market site leaders who and kind of talk about how those staple foods that we distributed to our Twin Cities Mobile Market partnership customers in partnership with Greater Twin Cities United Way, what the impact that those had. So let's hear it briefly from Haley.
I ended up with a resident who was really frustrated and confused and worried about what the lack of SNAP benefits was going to mean for them. She's an elderly woman who speaks another language other than English as her primary language and did not understand why this was happening and what this messaging was about. So when I was able to let her know that we were doing a free food distribution of food from the food group and the Twin Cities Mobile Market, she was there. She was like our first one in line, ready to pick up food. And she was so grateful. She came back multiple times to thank us for providing that resource. She even helped us load up carts for other residents because she knew that she wouldn't have access to food otherwise. So that was a really useful and important resource that we got for her. I ended up with a resident.
Right. You have to have a little tech challenge if I'm, running the Zoom. So, as we can see, that the SNAP rapid response really took so many different solutions and food shelves throughout the state, expanded services in a really important way. And what was really interesting is at the food group, we were literally in a meeting trying to debrief what we learned from our SNAP rapid response, how we might want to carry some of that programming forward, what we thought the ripple effects would be when we realized that we needed to create another rapid response, specifically around immigrant food access. So starting in kind of mid-December, we started to hear from a lot of our food shelf partners, especially starting in Minneapolis and St. Paul and then the suburbs, right? That there were really interesting and important changes to distribution patterns. And so what you can see from us pulling the data from January 2026 is that statewide, January saw a dip of 7% in food shelf visits. And as we saw at the beginning of the presentation, our general trend line, right, is steady increases. But January statewide saw a dip, but in Hennepin and Ramsey counties, what we saw was a drop of 17% in food shelf visits. And again, well before we had this data, we started hearing anecdotally from certain partners, right? In certain neighborhoods, people just were not coming to the food shelf, especially immigrant communities, communities of color. There started to be a huge increase in fear of people leaving their house. And so as we kind of, were faced with this change in trends, it was a really unique crisis to respond to in the food space, because generally, including with our SNAP rapid response, usually the crisis is we need more food. So then we mobilize truckloads of food. We know how to do that. We get together and we get more food out through our network of partners. This was really different in that what happened was people knew that food needs were high, but we knew that people were not able to access existing distribution methods. And so it was a different problem to solve than we had solved before. And it took some really creative problem solving, best practice sharing, and creativity to figure out how to respond quickly and appropriately to a situation that we had not seen. And so, some of the things that happened was we brought food shelf partners together to again hear what was happening. Toward the beginning of the metro surge, there was a lot of questions around safety. We had heard that there was increased ICE presence outside specific food shelves, that we had heard that some volunteers were being detained, that some volunteers doing food delivery were being followed. So, one of the first things that we all collaborated on and thought through together was, okay, how do we create some safety protocols to make sure that food shelves remain a safe community space? But the other thing that happened quickly was that we realized home delivery, right, was going to need to be a really big part of getting food to those who need it most. And I would say that, food shelves in Minnesota responded beautifully, again, as they do over and over. And there were kind of three main ways that people thought about delivery. Some of them had existing delivery programs or stood up delivery programs on their own and really got food to participants who no longer could come to the food shelf. Some people looked for different or creative solutions like DoorDash or other ways to do delivery. But the most common way that the food shelf network expanded home delivery was through partnerships with mutual aid groups. And so again, I'm sure many of you on this call were pretty aware of all of the different groups who stepped in to try to meet needs for families, whether it was school groups, PTOs, neighborhood associations, faith communities. There was a surge of mutual aid and volunteer mobilization. And it was not simple to understand what was happening or coordinate, right? And there were so many different groups doing different things. And again, generally, what would happen in a food moment like that is that there would be a call towards like centralizing and making an efficient plan and mapping everything. And that actually was inherently not what the moment called for, right? Having a decentralized, grassroots-led response was the only trusted way to meet community need, and meant that we had to look all together for a lot of different new kinds of partnerships. So again, one thing we focused on a lot at the food group, and we are so grateful that there are so many other amazing nonprofits who all contributed to the food needs in this space. But at the food group, we really leaned to our value of culturally connected food, knowing that food is magic, food can heal in times of really high stress and trauma. But for it to do that, it has to be the relevant foods that people know and need. So lean into getting culturally connected food out to our broad network of partners. But then we also developed a partnership with a group called Dios Habla Hoy that we wanted to highlight a little bit today. So again, I mentioned there was a lot of mutual aid mobilization that happened, and really groups who had deep, trusting relationships with community. So already in December, when things were just starting to be new and just starting to shift for our food shelf partners, we got a call from Dios Habla Hoy that they were a church, they were doing food distribution, they're having people sign up for home delivery. And they already had 10,000 families at that time signed up to receive food. So the food group, we were thinking like, how do we use our scale to be more as effective as possible, right? So there are a lot of amazing mutual aid groups who are doing, 10 boxes a week or 20 boxes a week. That wasn't a good fit for our infrastructure or our setup. But when we started to hear kind of the scale at which Dios Habla Hoy was starting to get people signed up, we thought, okay, this could be a really impactful way for us to get involved. So we started by providing some culturally connected food. And when we did, we got to volunteers, see their operation in action. It was amazing. And it was tough given their infrastructure. So there are 20 steps to the front door of the church. And so every case of masa that was loaded in was hand loaded in. They did this amazing work, but kind of despite their infrastructure. And so as we stayed in partnership and their numbers continued to grow, right, from 10,000 families signed up to 20,000 families signed up to, at the height of things, almost 30,000 families signed up to get food delivered. It became clear that, they were getting food from a lot of sources. Joyce Food Shelf in Uptown was an incredible partner, sourcing food through Second Harvest. They were sourcing some food through us. But it was time to think more creatively about how do we make this a little bit more sustainable? Because again, while this is a rapid response and it was so important to get things moving quickly, we also know that things like this have long ripple effects. And again, food access has been a challenge in immigrant communities in Minnesota for a really long time. So wanting to make sure we can build some of this to have a longer sustainability, right? And so together we brainstormed and we thought, okay, well, let's share space. So Dios Habla Hoy moved into one aisle of the food group's warehouse, and they have all of their food there 3 to 4 days a week. They bring volunteers to the food group every day to pack up their food, and then every day we bring a truck to the church so that they can have their volunteer network distribute it. And it was a moment of, we've never done anything like that. We've never had a partnership like that. It was beautifully chaotic and messy. And through it, I think both of our groups learned there are so many ways that we can play to our strengths without getting good at everything. So the food group strength is not in home delivery. It's not in those deep trusted relationships. Dios Habla Hoy's strength is not in food infrastructure, food safety, or having a space that volunteers can easily pack up. And so there was kind of a beautiful way that we could work together. Without having to reinvest or reinvent all of those things for both organizations. And again, as I mentioned, we really are thinking more about how do we make sure that our response can last, can have continued impact, because for so many families, what happened in December, January, and into February will have really long-term economic impacts. People who have not been able to work, who are needing to get jobs again, some folks who've been evicted, some folks who are behind on rent or other important bills. And so we want to make sure that we can have some sustained support. So we'll do that through our amazing network of food shelf partners. And again, I can hardly even begin to cover what the rapid response of the sector has looked like in our time together, because it's been so varied and so deep and so impactful. And I know we have food shelves on this call who could talk for hours about all the specific things they did in their local community, right? But wanted to just, again, try to paint a high level picture and really emphasize again that none of this was possible for one organization. It took everybody. It took all the food banks throughout the state and all of the food shelves and all the mutual aid groups, and so many others. But moving forward, we will continue to support our partners. So we have food credits right now that are going out specifically to partners who expanded their services or built programming to really meet this moment. And then similarly for Greater Minnesota, making sure we can have some grants go to partners not in the metro, because as things continued, what we saw is that the impacts and that fear of accessing services, it really did spread to other parts of the state, just not quite as quickly. And then again, continuing for the food group to lean into our value of culturally connected food and supporting emerging and immigrant farmers, which is core to what we do. So a couple things we learned, and again, please feel free to pop questions in the chat. I'll try to leave a few minutes for questions at the end as well. But again, wanted to just share at a really high level some of the things that we learned that we're thinking about and trying to carry with us, right? So there is a thing about pace. And it's really obviously rapid response is rapid, right? But I think it's worth noting that it's really different than how you would normally build programming as a nonprofit. You would normally, build something and then go out and try to get funding for it. And then once that was all lined up and organized and ready, launch something. And pace is paramount here. So we needed to be much more creative than that, much more adaptable, move pretty quickly, go out ahead of some things and piece other things together, right? And I think the rapidity of these different crises in the past year has shown us that we need to continue thinking differently about partnerships, creativity, solutions that aren't just based on maybe one organization. So again, I think the DHH example is really interesting because it's a partnership with Joyce, which is a different food shelf in South Minneapolis. It's a partnership with a church. It's a partnership that involves Second Harvest Heartland, and it's a partnership that also involves the food group. And so how do we think about this moment and radical collaboration and doing things that we've never done before, never tried before? And again, I think the other thing we're thinking about a lot at the food group is we probably need to plan for the next disruption. We don't know what it is, but looking at how many disruptions there have been and how they all have had food as a central focus, how do we continue to work that into our future planning processes for staff capacity, for budgeting, for all of those things, keeping nimbleness sort of at the forefront. And then continuing to advocate for change, right? While there have been some tough things that are impacting our work in the advocacy space, how do we keep advocating for the food system and support for the food shelves that we know they need and deserve? Lastly, I wanted to just briefly touch on kind of moving forward. As I've mentioned, we think this will have long legs and long ripple impacts. We know that there is just so much more that we all need to keep doing and connecting. At the food group, we will really continue to lean into our amazing partners who continue to so meet their local community needs, and then continue to lean into our values of equity, culturally connected foods, local, supporting farmers, understanding that all is really important as we think about what comes next and how we build sustainability kind of to adapt to this new normal. And on that note, I did want to put a really brief plug into a funding priority that is making its way through the state legislature right now to support Minnesota food shelves. We have had amazing success the last several years in getting additional one-time money to support food shelves in Minnesota. And if we're not able to secure one-time money, food shelves would feel a dramatic cut to their state grants that go statewide to all 87 counties in the state. So we are working to continue to advocate for that. If that is something that you care about, something that you want to help support, you can sign up for our action alerts. Laura put a link to the chat We have had a hearing in the Senate and a hearing in the House, but we have one more hearing to get through in the House to be considered. So it's a really important moment to try to raise our voices on the importance of funding food shelves to continue to be a front line through everything that community is experiencing. So with that, we have a few minutes for a couple questions if anybody has any. I did see one question in the chat around how long Dios Hablo Hoy is continuing, and I think the answer is for now, for a while. We're going to have more meetings to think together about what is the long-term sustainability plan, but no immediate changes to their services are being considered at this point. And then I saw another question in the chat just around SNAP eligibility changes. So yes, as we mentioned, the HR1 eligibility changes for SNAP went into effect in January. But because of banked months and deep policy details that if you want to talk to us about, I would love to talk to you, but most people do not want to talk about. It will be starting this spring, summer that people will start to lose benefit eligibility if they now are subject to work reporting requirements. So what the food group is doing is we run the Minnesota Food Helpline. So we are reminding people who are on SNAP that they can call the helpline. They can talk with our amazing multilingual staff about if they are newly subject to work reporting requirements. What does that mean? The best and most effective way to help people not lose their benefits is either to help them navigate through getting an exemption for work reporting or to help them understand the paperwork process so that they can be successful in submitting their paperwork. So those are the two main things we're trying to work on, both through the helpline and through our partnerships with other SNAP outreach grantees. And we'll be hosting a conversation with Food Shelves here in the next couple of weeks to go through those work reporting requirements and just make sure that all of us in the nonprofit food space can at least be helping people navigate through really tough and complicated changes. So with that, I know we didn't have a ton of time for questions, but we can absolutely keep talking. Cindy, yes, we can absolutely share a script for lawmakers. If you will just send us a note, we can connect you specifically with your lawmaker and help you understand what would maybe be the best way to approach. So if you're willing to reach out, we can get you connected. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Emily to just wrap us up.
Morning, everyone. Thank you so much for starting your day with us. We so appreciate it. I'm Emily Eddy White, Director of Advancement and Culture here at the Food Group. And just want to talk a little bit more about ways to get involved. We have so many partners on here today with us. We're so grateful for you all, program partners, donors, supporters. All of this work that we just talked about is through partnership and collaboration and wouldn't be possible without all of you. So thank you. And thanks for all the ways that you are all involved. We are powered by volunteers and donors and supporters. There's lots of ways to volunteer and plug in. Sophia mentioned DHH is a volunteer opportunity as well, multiple days a week from 9:30 to 12:30. That's on our website that you can get connected with that. And then we have packing and sorting food. And then seasonally, we'll have more opportunities with farming and gleaning and farmers market. So I'd love to plug you in. Also opportunities to donate online, as well as we have a spring match right now where you can leverage your gift to go even further. We mentioned advocacy. Encourage you to sign up for action alerts and get plugged in on that list to then receive all of the action alerts that we put out. We do virtual food drives, support farmers, local, supporting local food shelves, connecting in your local neighborhood and area to support the good work that's going on in your neighborhoods as well. And then check out our website and social media for more. But so appreciate all of you taking time to tune in this morning, and we are incredibly grateful for our partnership. So thank you.